What's up, electricians? I got 8 things to know about this e-bike before we start riding it. Next on the channel. So first of all, I made a t-shirt. Electricians, if you're part of Lectric Nation, you can go to ebikestrong.com and pick up this cool tee. Electricians are my nickname for all these electric e-bike fans out there, so definitely check it out and get some swag. You can find a lot of other e-bike shirts up there and hoodies and long sleeve tees as well that I've made, so ebikestrong.shop, check it out. Alright, so I wanted to put together some tips, just things to know before you start riding your electric XB for the first time, just from based on my experience to help you out there. I know a lot of the first-time riders have questions about when they first get their bike in terms of how to use it, tips and tricks around just keeping it maintained, things like that. So first of all, when you get your bike, you're going to want to check all the connections and the bolts on the bike. So the connections, there's a motor connection right here. So just make sure that's nice and tight. That's connected to your motor, to the controller. You know, most of your other connections are up here in the wrap, so you don't really need to check those that much. But you do want to check all the bolts on the bike. So what I recommend doing is getting a multi-tool like this with a bunch of Allen wrenches in it. Let me show a quick, it's just a L-kind multi-tool, and it's got all the different hex bolts you could want in there. And carry this on all your rides with you, no matter where you go. It's always a great thing to have at your disposal. So I always carry one of these on my e-bike, no matter what e-bike I'm riding, because you're going to need this. Things loosen up over time, and it's always good to tighten this stuff. So just check all your connections, your fenders here. Check your rack connections, check all the connections down there on the derailleur, check your, what else, your brake connections down there with those bolts, and tighten them up with this tool. And I'll put a link to this in the description. There's a bunch of these on the market, but a lot of e-bike companies are now sending these with their e-bikes as well. Most of them are cheap. A lot of the ones I've gotten from e-bike companies have fallen apart, so I like kind of the heavy duty ones that you can buy like Home Depot, places like that. But number 2 thing to know about is the brakes. You're going to want to break them in a bit. You know, go do some quick stops and you know, just hit those brakes hard at a kind of a full speed stop. I know a lot of the brakes too sometimes are squeaky. You know, you want to rub them with rubbing alcohol when you first get them. Make sure there's no grease or anything on there. You can also basically sand down the rotors a bit. You can actually take some great gritty sandpaper, rub them along the rotors where it meets the brake calipers, and just scuff them up a bit. Essentially, that'll help just bind them into the brake pads. And then you can also get something called D-Squeak here. I'll put a link to this on the description. But this is D-Squeak, and this will basically do exactly that. It'll stop your brakes from squeaking. It's more of a temporary solution overall. It does kind of wear off after a day or two, but it's a good thing to have, I think, overall. And it'll take that squeak out. It works pretty well for that task. So that's a bit about the brakes. So break them in, and you can sand down the rotors a little bit with some sandpaper. Rubbing alcohol, have that handy. You know, clean those rotors every month or so with some rubbing alcohol, just to keep them nice and clean, and that prevents just dirt and gunk getting into the brake pads overall. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 is when you're folding this e-bike, there's one important thing you want to do, which is taking out the key. Because it will get bent in you're moving it. I've done that more than once. So take the key out when you're folding the bike. It has to be in there at all times when you're riding it, of course. But I've learned that taking it out when folding it is a good idea. Otherwise it can get bent, and you don't want it to bend or break while it's in the actual bike. So when you're folding it around, sometimes the pedals can hit that key when you're folding it, putting it into a car or whatever. So just keep that in mind. Always take the key out when you're folding this e-bike. All right, number 4 thing about this bike is, let's talk about the battery for a second. I'm going to unfold the bike and show you what I mean. But the battery will fall out sometimes if you're not careful. So right now it's locked. There is a little, right now it's locked, so the little piece of metal came out. And now if I unfold the bike, it's locked in place. But you of course need to take the key out and unlock it when you are unfolding the bike. So if I do that, and I bring the bike down, if it's angled down at all, it's going to fall out. See that? So just watch out for that. You don't want it to slide out and hit the ground. And then the other thing about the battery I want to mention is that it has a handle on here, which is this plastic handle. And on my first Lectric XP, this handle broke. So just be careful with it. It's a pretty thin piece of plastic, and it can break on you if you're not careful with it. So just keep that in mind. Oh, okay, the pedals on this bike, okay, they're folding pedals from Wellgo. They will stick on you over time. In fact, actually, just bringing it here, this bike's only, a month old. One of the pedals got stuck on me and had to sit there for like 30 seconds and try and wrangle it back into place. So you can put some WD-40 in there, in the grooves where it bends. I recommend getting like just some different folding pedals or some different removable pedals. Lectric is a pedal I had in my previous XP 2.0 Lectric pedals. Those are quick release pedals, and you basically just put in a little insertion bolt here, and then you push them in, it comes right out. So you just pull right out of the bike, and I'll put a link to those in the description as well. Here's a picture of them as well on the screen. But these pedals will stick on you over time unless you really lubricate them a lot going forward. So just keep that in mind about the pedals. Number 6 tip would be about the tire pressure. So I run these about 25 PSI. I think they're recommended up to 30 PSI. They're on the side here. Yeah, inflate to 30 PSI. I run them about 25, so they're not too rock hard. If you do have bumps in your riding, you don't want them too hard. It'll just make that ride a little bit softer overall. So I run them on about 25 PSI. All right. The lower you go, the more bouncier they'll get. And so like for the Lectric XP Lite, which I'm getting shortly, it should be here on Sunday, I think, I'm going to probably put those around 20 PSI and see how that rides overall. So, because it has no front suspension on there, of course. And I know Lectric sells slime now with the X Premium. I prefer to use Flatout in my tires. So you can buy it on Amazon. I'll throw a link to it in the description as well. Flatout has Kevlar in it, and stuff like slime is more of a temporary solution. Kevlar, the Flatout will last a lot longer, they say, when it comes to just liquid you can put into your tires for keeping them for not getting flat overall. So number 7 thing is, if you're not a a bike technician, if you don't know a lot about bikes, how bikes work, when you get your bike, bring it to a bike mechanic. Just tell them to do a quick tune-up on it. It doesn't have to be an e-bike mechanic. Any bike mechanic can go in and fix the brakes, adjust the derailleur, check all the screws and everything for you, and tighten everything up, and just make sure it's ready to go. So we can go to places like VeloFix. They have franchises across the country. But I think most e-bikes, most bike shops will tune this up for you, because you're just asking them to do the mechanical parts of it, not the electronical parts. So keep that in mind. But yeah, if you are worried about making sure the bike is perfect, just bring it to a mechanic when you first get it. Have them do a quick tune-up on it. It shouldn't cost you more than $50-100 for them to do something like that. And that just gives you peace of mind. And again, if you're not mechanically inclined, then have a professional do it overall. And finally, number 8 thing to do with this bike when you get it is do a range test on it. You can watch my range test videos on the XP. I did a throttle only in a real world. Now that's for my weight and my riding conditions here in Connecticut. Yours will differ. If you're heavier or lighter, your mileage will vary. So go out and do a throttle only range test. That's kind of your baseline low point. And then do a real world range test. Been using PAS 2 and 3 with some hills, things like that, and see how far you can go. You can take the bike down to, say 44 volts on the voltage meter, and leave it there. It'll basically shut off on you around 42, 43 volts, depending, roughly. And so that's what to expect there. So go out and figure out, know what your range is going to be before you start really riding this bike overall. So definitely want to do that, and just have that in the back of your mind, so when you are out on rides, you know what to get. So I think I got 20 miles on the throttle only range test, and I got 32, I believe, on the real world conditions range test. Now I weigh 173 at current, and if you weigh much heavy, if you're over 200 pounds, you're going to get less mileage. If you're 150, you're going to get more mileage probably. So keep that in mind with these e-bikes. Those are my 8 tips for the Lectric XP before you ride. Hope you like it. If you got any more tips, put them in the comments. Love to hear what you guys are saying out there about these e-bikes, and we'll see you next time on the channel. Thanks for watching.